I'm author and creative warrior Sarah Faxon, and today we are joined by Anna Bushi to talk about her amazing book, Heir to Mala. Anna, welcome to the show.
Hey, Sarah, thanks for having me.
Now, Anna, you and I met at a really fun local bookstore event, a virtual bookstore event that was hosted by Mysterious Galaxy. And I was so excited because we have, I feel like, similar vibe stories of both this sort of mystical setting and familiar places or places that feel familiar. And one of the things I'm enjoying so much about your book right now is how descriptive it is. I actually feel like I'm walking the halls with your characters and smelling the jasmine, and it is just it's beautiful. Absolutely well done. And you want to tell our viewers here a little bit more about your story?
Hey, thanks a lot for that, Sarah. Yeah, so, um, I've always loved to read. I have, and kept up with that through adulthood. I love to read. And a few years ago, while I was reading, other fantasy series, mostly based in, European royal families, I thought, hey, how about writing a book that's based on Indian culture, which is different, from what you see, and that just sparked my imagination. And so, while the book is loosely based on India and the royal families, and the culture and tradition from ninth century to about 11th century, the story itself, the land itself is fictional. I just made up a land of Magadha, and I actually drew this on paper. And luckily, I found a local artist who was able to take my map, basically with scribbles, and render something beautiful. The story, definitely, I want to talk about. I want to keep it true to the times in terms of the male and female traditions and their roles, but also still portray a strong female character. And since this is not fantasy, it's hard to give my character magical powers. And it wouldn't, most women did not fight back then. So I couldn't make her a warrior, princess either. So without those, no wand or sword, but I still had to make her a strong character. And hopefully the readers will recognize that. They'll, when they read the book, they'll sense a strong female protagonist.
One of the things that I really love about her is how she's constantly reminding herself of duty and how no, this isn't how a princess would act. And I just love that, how she's still young, but she still has that greater picture in mind of I have to be more responsible about this. I just think that's a mature character and so strong. And I'm about 2/3 of the way through, and I just can't wait to see how the story unfolds and what'll happen. It's a really good adventure.
So tell me more about your book, Sarah. For readers who interested in historical, fiction like mine. Tell me more about your book.
Well, thank you. My books, The Animal Court and Foreign and Domestic Affairs, are political fantasies, but they're very light on the fantasy. And what I ended up doing was studying a lot of Russian culture, which is not my background. It's not something that's familiar to me, but it always fascinated me. And, you were kind of talking about how a lot of our fairy tales stem from Western Europe. So I wanted to do something from Eastern Europe. And so my story is a political adventure of a woman who knows that there's so many things wrong with her country and she has so many ideas, but nobody's listening. And even though the king has her as his advisor, he's like, that's nice, Gertrude. Thank you for your contribution. And kind of dismisses her because all the other politicians involved have him by the throat. And so the first book's all about her trying to save her country from the animal court, from the council. And the second book is 20 years later, where Gertrude has now assumed the throne, and what happens with her and her family, because there's foreign and domestic affairs threatening her rule and her children. So that's a
You
little
know,
bit about mine.
hey, that's fantastic. There are a lot of commonalities between our books. So my second book set in the same world. It's coming out this summer. Yeah, and it's similar to yours. There is a time jump. It takes place about a decade later, and these characters that you meet in book one, are in positions of power, and looks like the other common thread between our books is politics. Not present day politics. I think mine is more royal court intrigue. There's some Game of Thrones in there. Of course, not anything magical. Looks like yours does too.
Yeah, I commonly refer to Game of Thrones to give people the idea of there's a lot of politics going on. Of course, there is a little bit of fighting, but that's not the focus. It's all the backdoor deals and the whispers and the rumors afloat, and how much of that is still kind of true today. And it's really fascinating how you are releasing two books within a year, basically, and I've also released the two. And you and I have both attended an event last night with 170 some authors who also bridged through the COVID trials and tribulations, and we produce stories and are sharing them now with the world. You want to share with our viewers a little bit about your creative writing process and how you made it through the COVID blues?
This year, or last year, I should say, 2020, turned out to be very different than what I anticipated. So I'm an engineer by training and by trade, and I had anticipated a lot of travel. I so and in fact my first business trip, the beginning of 2020, I cut it short. It was 2 week trip. I cut it short in a week and came back because it was in March, and countries were going into lockdown. So I came back, and I think so. The positive for me, of course, there were a lot of things. So many people suffered, and of course, people lost jobs and lives. The silver lining for me is, lot less travel, and also parties, social activities, a lot of that were cut down. So I had, I before 2020, I did write about. For me, it was just getting into the habit of writing daily, at least for a few minutes. So I would write at about 30 minutes on average a day. Maybe not a lot of words were put down, but at least, I thought about the story and I made progress. With COVID, I did have a little bit more time to focus on writing. But the negative side is I was looking forward to going to local conferences. So I had attended one a couple of years back, I think in Orange County, Southern California Writers Association. I was looking forward to attending one in San Diego. And I think they did have one virtually. I skipped it because for me the main draw was meeting other local authors. So I think that was a big challenge. I'm glad that you and I got in touch. even though it's virtual. I would have loved to meet local authors in person, and talk about experiences, learn from each other. So that definitely, is one thing I missed. How about you? How did you fare through the pandemic?
Oh man. Really what you said there about dedicating a little chunk of time, even 13 minutes a day, 15 minutes a day, just to get you thinking about it. That is something I'm a huge proponent of. I try to do 15 minutes a day. And of course, sometimes there's more and sometimes there's less, but I feel like it averages out. But it's just that effort of I gotta do this. I've got to do this because if I don't, nobody else will for me. So I absolutely love and admire that. I was laid off for a good, or not laid off, I was put on furlough for a good period of the year in 2020. So I had a lot of time on my hands. And I think the first day I was like, all right, I'm gonna write a book. And I ended up drafting out the Blue Dragon Society, which is my next series that's coming out. And then I realized I kind of want to punch up Animal Core and Foreign and Domestic Affairs. And, when am I going to get this opportunity again to have this kind of time? So I just used every moment that I could to really push myself, to keep myself going and to keep myself focused on something, because every time I looked out the window or turned to the news, I was like, so the world is falling apart. And, and in my world, in my novels, in my writing, I control what's happening. And it's kind of a control freak thing to say, but so many of us write or read to escape. And, I heard a few times in the last week that so many people are turning back to reading. So many people are starting to write. And we're really entering this age, this new era of creativity. And we're getting over the hump of COVID and realizing that, yeah, it's okay to take days off, but it's also okay to create again. It's okay to read. And I think we're actually going to come out of this with a ton of more beautiful novels and a ton of more readers out of it. And while, yes, it is a true bummer that we can't meet in person, we are establishing so many new contacts still, and we're able to meet virtually from the comfort of our own homes and learn from each other, like you said. And that has been definitely a great, beautiful silver lining of 2020 into 2021.
That what you said, rings so true to me as well. Because 2020, a lot of time, what was happening outside our homes felt like, we couldn't control it. Um, I mean, I honestly haven't gotten a haircut in a year because by
I
the time
feel
I
you on
think
that. Let me tell
by the time
you.
I decide, either we are back in lockdown, or, the rules have changed, and writing that way gives you that sense of control. I think you mentioned you read to escape, and writing, you create this own world where, the realities of, 2020, um, you know, does not have to affect, that world. It's like, definitely for me, um, I think any art medium does this. Writing definitely allowed me to escape reality, even if it's just a few minutes, and don't have to worry about, things falling apart outside. Yeah. So I liked that the series name, Blue Dragon Society. Very catchy. Tell me more about it. Is it going to be a similar, like a royal setting, or is it different?
It's a little different. So it takes place in the same world. Um, the Tenka, where the Animal Court and Foreign Domestic Affairs are, take place in an island kingdom far away from the mainland. And this takes us into the mainland, where there is fantasy, there are witches, there are vampires, there are werewolves. And we go into a capital city where there are all these really bizarre, horrific murders taking place. And the
Hmm.
King's Guard, the King's investigators are like, what is this? What do we do with this? And they consult with a mystic specialist who specializes in enchanted creatures. And she's like, this isn't an enchanted creature. This isn't a demon. This is nothing that I've seen before. So it brings about, what is this? What is happening? And so they try to bring in the Blue Dragon Society, which is a special operative group. And they've never seen anything like this before. So they're trying to figure out, what is doing this? Where are these murders linked to? And they turn to a demonologist to see if this is something that he should deal with instead. So that's a little bit about the first in this series. I'm hoping it's going to be a trilogy. I started writing it actually over 20 years ago.
Oh, wow.
uh, so it's taken a little bit of time to figure out, what my 11-year-old self was thinking when I first started thinking about that book. And it's found a new direction thanks to my incredible editor slash friend, Teresa Halverson, who really helped me to be like, let's think about this and really put this story on track. And now it's something that's really wonderful, and something I'm really excited to put together.
Hey, very, very interesting. And I think the brilliant part of what you just told me is, you know, everything you said, came out of your imagination. That all the world building, that is fantastic. Um, and looks like you have a good friend here who is editing your novels. Or
Yeah, it's so Teresa Halverson, many of my viewers know her from various interviews that we've done. We're also together on the Semi Sages of the Pages podcast. And she is another phenomenal author contact that I met just before 2020. And we've been able to continue to communicate. And, like Anna and I were talking about, it's so important to make those connections, to find somebody who understands you, your writing process, who can go through and be like, is this really what you want to do here? Did you know that these two dots connected? And just help you to make your story shine even more. And sometimes it's a really good friend, sometimes it's a professional editor. But once you make those bonds and create that trust with someone, that is gold.
With my first book, I'll tell you, I had this fear of sharing that work. I wrote for 5 years, and nobody had seen what I wrote. And I think I mentioned a few years back when I went to the writers conference. I actually took a few pages. They have these read and critique sessions that go on at night, after the conference is done, like 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 12 o'clock. They have
Yeah.
various. And when I went to that, I mean, it's a small group of people, typically one mentor, and then maybe half a dozen writers, and we all read our work. And it's like your baby that you have in your head. And finally, it was a major step for me, just sharing that work. And like you, I actually work with a local editor. She's also a author in San Diego, Krista Ellich Coth. And yeah, so she, like you said, you have to find somebody who understands your writing and your work. So I've been very fortunate, in finding somebody here in San Diego. Yeah.
That's fantastic. And, viewers, if you're trying to find people to help you with your works, look up local Facebook pages. I'm sure there's a ton of local authors in your area. And if not, we're all a Zoom call away pretty much these days. So it's a lot easier to connect with people than you may think. And, just remember, you're not alone. We're all in this together, and we're all rooting for you. Anna, any last tips for our viewers today?
Don't be afraid to share your thoughts. Not everybody is going to like what you put out there, but I think it's mainly for yourself. I try to write what I would like to read. So yeah, just go do it.
Beautifully said. Well, thank you so much, Anna, for coming in tonight. And thank you, viewers, for watching. Be sure to check out the description below where I'll have a link to Anna's website and her book. And be sure to subscribe and like this video so you'll be in the know whenever we release our latest videos. Once again, Anna, thank you so much.
Thank you, Sarah.